Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leasur, and in today's video, I'm going to be share a science's fiction story. If you're new here, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a future upload. And for my returning viewers, thank you so much for your support. Let's get started. The Metal Man, science fiction, story. Jack Williamson, 1908-2006, USA. The Metal Man stands in a dark, dusty corner of the Tyburn College Museum. It is generally known that the Metal Man was once Professor Thomas Kelvin of the Geology Department. For some years he had been spending his summer vacations along the Pacific coast of Mexico, prospecting for radium. Apparently he sold millions of dollars worth of salts of radium. He was pouring out his millions in the establishment of scholarships and endowments as if he expected to die soon. Kelvin just drank the last of the wonderful purple liquid that has kept him alive since he came back, and he had too little time to finish that necessarily short account of his adventure. He had himself transferred to the schooner, yacht, that day, trusting Captain McAndrews. Fate ruled otherwise. The goal of his expedition was the headwaters, source, of El Rio de la Sangre, the river of red blood. Its red waters flow into the Pacific. On his trip last year he had discovered that its waters were powerfully radioactive. Water has the power of absorbing radium emanation, release. He hoped to find radium-bearing minerals in the bed of the upper river. He had hired an Indian guide and made a mule-back journey to their foot. The water in the escarpment, cliff, steep slope, was more powerfully radioactive than at the mouth. He bought a small monoplane, lightweight, small area for landing, comparatively slow in speed and able to spend only 6 hours aloft, up in the air. One morning he made a trial flight. It flew smoothly, and in the afternoon he refilled the tanks and set off for the Rio de la Sangre. The stream looked like a red snake crawling out to the sea. Flying higher up, he found the river disappeared beneath the towering mountains. He flew over the cliffs and came over the crater, large hole on the top of a volcano. He saw a great pool of green fire, heavy gas. In the glory of the evening sun, the snow-capped summits with bright crowns were dyed with crimson, added with purple and gold, shaded with strange and incredibly beautiful hues. He circled about the place, snatched away in wonder. The sun sank lower and the center of the green lake rose up in a shining peak. It flowed up into a great hill of emerald fire. For a moment it hung unbelievably glorious in the light of the setting sun, and it sank. With its fall a sinister, dangerous darkness descended upon the desolate, uninhabited wilderness. He was seized by a fear. Perhaps some other scientists had already discovered the deposits of radioactive minerals. He had witnessed the trial of an airship in which radium was utilized as a propellant, explosive, oxidizer, fuel. He noticed a pale bluish luminosity was gathering about the cover of the cockpit, and in a moment the whole machine, even his own person, was covered with it. He felt no physical discomfort. But as the blue radiance continued to increase, he observed that his body felt heavier, and the machine was being drawn downward. His mind was flooded with wonder and terror. He fought to retain sufficient self-possession to fly the ship. His arms were soon so heavy that he could hold them upon the controls only with difficulty. He felt a slight dizziness to the bloods being drawn from his head. When he recovered, he was already almost upon the green. Somehow, his gravitation had been increased and he was being drawn into the pit. It was possible to keep the plane under control only by diving and keeping at a high speed. He plunged into the green pool. The gas was not suffocating, as he had anticipated. He noticed no change in the atmosphere. His vision was limited to a few yards around. The wings of the plane were still distinctly discernible, visible. Suddenly he noticed a smooth sandy plain for a safe landing. For a while he was confined there by his own weight. Later he was able to clamber over the side of the cockpit, carrying his water bottle and automatic, which were themselves immensely heavy. He was unable to stand erect, but he crawled off over the coarse, rough, shining, red sand, stopping at frequent intervals to lie flat and rest. When he was 100 yards away, he saw a score of lights floating through the green toward the airplane. He made no movement but lay and watched them. They floated to the plane and wheeled about it. With a slow, heavy motion. Closer and lower they came until they reached the ground about it. When he went to resume his flight, he found his excess of gravity almost entirely gone, though he went on hands and knees for another 100 yards to escape possible observation. When he got to his feet, the plane was lost to view. He walked on for perhaps a quarter of a mile and suddenly realized that his sense of direction was altogether gone. He was completely lost in a strange world. There was no life, no sound, no motion. He realized that it was stupidity to walk further. He had a peculiarly unpleasant feeling of helpless fear. His foot struck a light object that rang like metal. He bent down to see what he had kicked. It was a metal bird, an eagle formed of metal, with the wings outspread. It was white with green color. It weighed no more than the living bird. Each feather was complete and flexible. Somehow a real eagle had been turned to metal. He was struck with fright for his own safety. Might I be changed to metal? He found many metal things there. Half buried in the glowing sands were metal birds of every kind. At the climax, he found a pterosant, a flying reptile, changed to ageless metal. Its wingspread was fully 15 feet, it would be a treasure in any museum. Then he examined himself that the tips of his fingernails, hairs of hands were already changed to light green metal. The shock unnerved him completely. He screamed aloud in agony of soul and ran off wildly. Suddenly he came upon the great sphere that rested motionless in a cradle of black metal. Then he came upon a blank of violet vegetation. Waist deep it was, grass. Like, with thick narrow leaves, dotted with clusters of small pink booms, and little purple berries. A score of yards beyond he saw a sluggish, slow-moving, red stream, El Rio de la Sangre. He threw himself down in the violet growth and lay sobbing with fatigue and terror. For a long time he was unable to stir or think. The tips of metal had doubled in width in his fingernails. He tried to control his nervousness and to think. If he could find the plane, he might escape the fearful action of the radioactive minerals before it was too late. He was hungry, so he plucked off a few of the purple berries and tasted them, which were salty and metallic. Plants were able to exist there because of their compounds counteracting the metal-forming emanations. He lost no time in eating a cluster of the berries, and then he poured the water from his canteen and filled it with their juice. Maybe neutralization of radium due to fluid saved him from the terrible burns. He lay there until dawn, dozing a little at times. After eating a few more of the berries, he ascertained the direction of the stagnant, motionless, red water. He counted his paces. He had walked about 2.5 miles, along by the violet plants up to a cliff. The red river plunged out of sight by the cliff in a racing whirlpool, current, waterspout. His watch had stopped. He went on passing metal trees, barren birds. He was ravenously hungry and thirsty. He stood petrified, stonified, in amazement, wondering vaguely at the what and why of the thing. Then he saw a whole forest of flames. He crouched back against the cliff, city of lights. He had no more courage now, as he had gone about 15 miles according to his calculations. He reached opposite the place where the crimson river flowed under the wall. Soon the wall was lost to view. He came upon nothing but the wastes of red sand. On and on he wandered. He lay down in a little hollow in the sand. He saw a glittering, blazing crystal upright prism. Each face of it had purple cone eye. It was an alien form of life, but not human or animal. Yet it had intelligence. Crystallizing salts take intricate forms. He drew his automatic and fired thrice. It dropped until the gleaming lower point of the prism. Then the scarlet fire reached out caressingly, flowed over his body. His weight grew less. He was lifted, held against the point. That left its mark on his chest. The thing floated into the air, carrying him. He was overcome with nausea. The scene grew black and he knew no more. He awoke floating free in a brilliant orange light. He touched no solid object. He twisted, kicked about, at nothingness. He could not move or turn over, because he could get a hold on nothing. He could not move or turn over, because he could get a hold on nothing. His memory of the last 2 days seemed a nightmare. His clothing was still upon him. His canteen still hung, or rather floated, by his shoulder. His automatic was in his pocket. He was floating, devoid of gravity and free as an object in space, in the orange flame at the top of one of the black cylinders. He kicked, clawed desperately at the air, all in vain. He did not move an inch. An idea came to his mind. He pointed the gun to the side, and fired 6 rapid shots. The recoil, drawing back, of each explosion sent him drifting faster, rocket-wise, toward the edge. He descended slowly and felt a curious lightness for several minutes. And to his surprise, when he struck the ground, the airplane was right before him. It seemed to be intact, unharmed. He started the engine with nervous haste, and sprang into the cockpit. In a few minutes he was above the green. He half expected the gravitational wave to be turned on him again, but higher and higher he rose unhindered. The sun blazed high in the heavens. Soon he landed on the beach of Baca Morena, town. He had had enough of radium hunting. He sold the plane to a rancher, livestock farmer, at his own price, and told him to reserve a place for him on the next steamer, which was due in 3 days. Then he went to the town's single inn, ate, and went to bed. The next day, he found that his shoes and the pockets of his clothes contained a good bit of the red sand. He found it a radium compound so rich that the little handful was worth millions of dollars. But the fortune was of little value. Despite frequent doses of the fluid from his canteen, and the best medical aid, he has suffered continually, and now that his canteen is empty, he is doomed. Thus the manuscript ends. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future upload. And if you have any suggestions for future content, feel free to leave them in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your support and I'll see you in the next one.